Welcome to You Have My Sword. Today we're talking about the Watcher in the Water, a tentacle monster that rivals anything you've probably seen in hentai. Let's talk about it. First, of course, a listener question. Diego writes, I've only seen the films and done some light wiki research, but do the dwarves see Durin's Bane as a god? Also, why is Gimli so surprised to see everyone in the mines dead? Did he not know? How did he not know? Lol. Okay. Interesting question in regards to if the dwarves see Durin's Bane as a god. Durin's Bane is another name for the Balrog that lives in the mines of Moria, for those not familiar with the term, Durin's Bane. But as far as I know, nowhere in the Legendarium does it mention the dwarves view this particular Balrog this way. It wouldn't be insane to assume this, since many people of Numenor, as we know, viewed Sauron as a god, as did the orcs of Mordor. So, for context, in Third Age 1980, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, aka Moria, then ruled by Durin the Sixth, dug a little too deeply in their lust for mithril and unearthed a, and I quote, nameless terror, which we would later discover to be the Balrog, who, as I said, is often referred to as Durin's Bane. So, the Balrog expelled the dwarves and continued to live there all by his lonesome. Around 5 centuries later, orcs moved into the mines, and the Balrog either ignored them or ruled them, perhaps since they were all servants of Morgoth. It's not said for certain, but things seem to be generally copacetic. In Third Age 2799, the Battle of Azanulbazar was fought at the gates of Khazad-dûm, and we see this in the Hobbit films, right? The dwarves were victorious, leaving only a few orcs left alive in the mines, probably by accident, but the losses among the dwarves were huge, to say the least. A battle won for sure, but to what cost, right? So they subsequently lacked the power to retake the mines, especially given the continued presence of the Balrog. And due to all of this, Khazad-dûm remained a relatively barren timeshare for evil, essentially. Okay, so jump to Third Age 2989. Balin led an expedition of Longbeards from the Lonely Mountain to try and reclaim Khazad-dûm. Now, since an insane amount of time had passed, the orcs had multiplied considerably since the Battle of Azanulbazar, and though Balin's forces fucked most of them up, they were overwhelmingly outnumbered and ultimately killed. We might actually touch more on all of this in today's episode as it pertains to the Mines of Moria. So definitely keep listening for even more context. Okay. So when Gimli, per happenstance, discovered their bodies in the mines, he was aware of the expedition, yes, but not of the failure, or not of the full scope of the failure here. And was absolutely wrecked, to say the least, to find many of his friends, a couple of whom were part of Thorin's party, and thus very good friends of his father, had died in their efforts. While Gimli knew the history, he was too young, at 62 years old at the time, mind you, to join Thorin's party. And yes, 62 years old is very young for a dwarf. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I am happy to explain in further detail in my Discord if you want to follow up. Now, for today's episode, we are talking about the Watcher in the Water. Now, what do we know about the Watcher in the Water? Not much, honestly. It's another aspect of Tolkien's world kind of left to be vague. Whether that's by design or not, we can't say for sure. We do know the Watcher in the Water was a horrifying and mysterious Lovecraftian beast with many tentacles living in a stagnant pool or lake near the west gate of Moria, which was described by Tolkien himself as a dark, still lake created by the damming of the Saranen River. It's said that the water had gradually grown deeper and crept closer to the doors of Durin, leaving only a narrow walkway where once the high road allowed traffic between Ost in Edhil, the capital of Eregion, and Khazad-dûm, many years before the Second Age. Some said it was the creature itself who created the dam over many decades. Very sneaky. I actually talked about this a little bit in our listener question, but bear with me while I repeat myself, a common theme on this podcast. So, in Third Age 2989, an expedition led by Balin attempted to reclaim Moria. Their activity attracted the attention of the orcs, who began to attack the dwarves, obviously. Now, jump to year 2994, and the dwarves tried their damnedest to escape from the mines, but were stopped by the Watcher, who killed Owen. Owen is actually Gimli's direct uncle, being that Owen is the brother of Gimli's father, Glóin. Owen is one of the dwarves in Thorin's company who set out to reclaim Erebor from Smaug. Later, he followed Balin in what we currently know was an ill-fated attempt to retake Moria. A for effort though, guys. Honestly. Anyways, when the Fellowship of the Ring found the Book of Mazabul, which is sort of like a dwarven census, they read it and found this quote. "The pool is up to the wall at the west gate. The Watcher in the Water took Owen. We cannot get out." These were likely some of the last recorded words and information from this company's excursion into Moria. So let's jump to January 13th in Third Age 3019. The Watcher attacked the Fellowship right as they opened the doors of Durin to enter Moria. It grabbed Frodo by the foot and attempted to drag him into the water. Sam slashed vigorously at the arm holding Frodo, causing it to release him. The party then ran their asses through the doorway, only to be followed by several tentacled. Obviously, our Fellowship escaped, but this creature possessed insane strength and was alarmingly intelligent, though, because after the escape of the Fellowship into Moria, the creature's arms hurled the enormous stone doors shut and uprooted the trees which grew on either side, barring the doors and locking the Fellowship in. This shows that the creature knew the mines were dangerous and decided, hey, if I can't kill you, Moria will. And it wasn't so off base, right? So silently, Gandalf noted that it seized Frodo. It sought him out, right? You know, as the One Ring bearer, initially suggesting an influence by the One Ring. But we do not know if this creature is influenced by the One Ring, as it is described as being much older and fouler than orcs themselves, and nobody quite knows where it came from. Very similar to our girl Ungoliant. It may have grabbed Frodo simply by chance, or perchance it is a servant of the current Dark Lord, which to me feels unlikely given its age and mysterious history. It is unknown what happened to the Watcher in the following centuries, but dwarves succeeded in retaking Moria in the Fourth Age. I'd love to know if the Watcher remained in secret, retreated, or disappeared back into the void to play Uno with Melkor and Ungoliant. We don't know for sure. So, let's go over some Watcher in the Water fun facts and its depictions across some Tolkien-based media. So, fun facts. It is common for the Watcher in the Water to be featured as the Kraken Peter Jackson essentially created, right, for the films. But it should be noted that Tolkien never described the creature's physical attributes aside from the tentacles. So, Peter Jackson did take creative liberties for the films. The Watcher's species and exact nature is completely unknown. The Silmarillion specifies that all of Morgoth's servants loathed and shunned the water and would only venture into the sea in dire need, though the Watcher appears to be malicious, suggesting it may be operating independently of the Dark Lord, similar to Smaug and other dragons in the same age. Also, in Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, there is rumored to be another, seemingly larger, Watcher in the Sea of Nirnin. Okay, so let's go over its depictions in some Tolkien-based media. We'll start in 1978 with The Lord of the Rings, the film. So, the Watcher is a green, multi-tentacled monster, but here only the tentacles can be seen. It takes Bill the Pony, rest in peace to a real one, and pulls the doors of Durin shut once the Fellowship is inside the mountains. In 2001, in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the Watcher in the Water is seen in Peter Jackson's rendition of The Fellowship of the Ring as a very detailed computer-generated creature. In the movie, the Watcher is disturbed by Merry and Pippin, who threw rocks in the water to pass the time while Gandalf tries to figure out the password to gain entrance to Moria. This does differ from the novel, in which it was Boromir who disturbed the water by throwing a stone. In either case, by the time the riddle of the door is figured out, as we know, speak friend and enter, by Frodo in the film and Gandalf in the original novel, the Watcher is already provoked. It catches Frodo and lifts him in the air despite Samwise Gamgee's attempts to defend him. The rest of the Fellowship, who attempted to injure the many tentacles of the Watcher, save him. The Watcher drops Frodo when it is injured and he is caught by Boromir. Legolas shoots the Watcher in the eye as the Fellowship of the Ring retreats into the mines of Moria. Just as they make it inside, as I said, the Watcher tears down the doorway and the way out is blocked by falling rocks. After the gate is blocked, the Fellowship is then forced to travel into the darkness of Moria, whether they like it or not. During the scene in the Chamber of Marzabul, the fact that the Watcher killed Owen is omitted from Gandalf's reading of the Book of Marzabul. A detail that would have been nice to keep, as it relates directly to Gimli's direct family, and would have been kind of some nice character development for Gimli, right? Although Tolkien described the creature to have 21 tentacles, Peter Jackson instead gave it 12 visible tentacles. This was due to the effects team finding that 21 tentacles was difficult to render properly. I think that is very interesting and a very cool fun fact. In the game adaptation of the novel, the Watcher is depicted as a Nessie-like creature with many arms, and I'll be honest, it looked goofy as fuck. Okay, let's go into the Third Age, The Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, which was a video game. The Watcher in the Water is the first real boss that Barad-dûr's party has to face. It attacks consists mainly of tentacle attacks and a skill called Reeking Spout, a gust of foul breath and slime that deals significant damage to the whole party. So it's like a area of effect spell. After a brief but fierce battle, Barad-dûr's company is able to anger the Watcher enough to clear the way for them to enter Moria. Shortly after, they end up fighting the Watcher again, this time in a huge lake that has flooded part of Moria. And this time, they kill it for good. However, this game is not canon to the book, or even to the movie, so the Watcher's fate here is still unknown. Okay, now in EA's The Battle for Middle-earth 2, the Watcher in the Water is a power to use in Isengard and the goblins in the evil campaign or in a skirmish. So when it attacks, it uses its tentacles to smack any surrounding enemies. When picking up an enemy with one of its tentacles, it eats it, thus healing itself. It is a commander on the Good campaign in missions 2, 6, and 8. When it dies or its time is done, it goes back into the water pool where it goes to its home until it is summoned again. In the Evil campaign, it costs 10 power points, while in a skirmish, it costs 15. This game is pretty fun. If you have time to look into it, I say give it a shot. Okay. Now, in 2002, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the video game, the Watcher is depicted as a sea serpent-like creature with several thick tentacles that shoot out of the pool. The player, in the persona of Aragorn, needs to shoot them with a bow to stun the Watcher while Gandalf attempts to decipher the password for the West Gate. Now, in 2008, The Lord of the Rings Online, Mines of Moria, the Watcher in the Water first features in the Moria introduction, obviously, where it drove off the dwarves of the Iron Garrison in their first attempt to enter Moria. They need to find a weapon capable of harming it, which serves to introduce the player to the expansion pack's new legendary item system. After being driven out of the Black Pool before the Doors of Durin, it is encountered and driven off again in the Waterworks of Moria later in the epic series. Its final appearance was in a 12-man raid in which the objective is to finally put an end to the Watcher in the Water. I loved this in The Lord of the Rings Online. I remember playing this when it first came out. It was very exciting, and this game well and truly holds up. If you were looking for a very comfy game to play that can pretty much be run on any computer at this point, play The Lord of the Rings Online. It is amazing. It's a lot of fun, and it is still exceptionally, like, it holds up visually, and it's still full of players, as Lord of the Rings kind of is like having a renaissance right now. I have noticed that the servers are still like really full. I watch a couple streamers play Lord of the Rings Online. That's also a lot of fun in the game. It just holds up. I definitely suggest, if you are a Tolkien fan, try this game. It's super comfy. All right, and honestly, that concludes it for this episode. Thank you. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. So catch us over at youhavemyswordpodcast.com for links to all socials and our support page. We use Coffee now. If you'd like to support the show, you can choose how much to contribute and when, and aren't locked into any goofy Patreon tiers. Again, feel free to write into the show as well with literally anything Tolkien related. Anything from a listener question, a fun fact, how you got into Tolkien, or even fantasy books in general. I would love to know. If you think Harry Potter is better, or how Lord of the Rings was ruined for you because your ex is now dating someone who is a super fan and has a podcast about Lord of the Rings. Literally anything. I do love reading y'all's emails. Also, thank you for your patience as we took a bit of a break for the holidays. This allows myself and my producer to make it through the end of the year alive and mostly well. That's subjective. We will be taking another break towards the end of the year for the holidays, and I'll keep y'all abreast on that over at the You Have My Sword Twitter. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and you have my sword.
Edgeworks Nebula.